All right, Matt Stinchcomb is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline at mstinch79 on Twitter. You see him on the SEC Network. What's up, Matt? How are you?
Man, I'm doing great. Y'all doing all right over there?
Doing fantastic. Thanks a lot. Obviously, you travel the whole SEC, but you make your home, if I'm not mistaken, still in Atlanta. You played at Georgia. What is the listen, I'm just going to say this. Going into Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the confidence level of the Georgia fan that was there the first time was near 100%. Where is it now going into Indianapolis and Lucas Oil Field, do you think?
100% of what? I'll say this. I just got done. We were just talking about this. The Georgia fans' default setting is caution,
right.
Cautiously optimistic at best. And I would have said, and this is all anecdotal, but it would have been an interesting scientific experiment to see just how optimistic Georgia fans were going into that SEC championship game. Because for Georgia folks, it's almost always, yeah, but. We've got a real good team, but part of that's just being a sports fan in the state of Georgia. We've endured quite a bit. The Braves finally took care of business, but we've seen Super Bowls that look like a sure thing go the other direction. And y'all well know there have been a number of occasions where Georgia has been as close to getting a title only to be turned away. I can think of 3 different occasions, all involving that team over in Tuscaloosa. So there's a reason for that. And even going into the SEC championship game this year, where I would have thought there should have been even more enthusiasm from an optimism standpoint, the folks that I was around, it was almost frustrating because you're going, look, you should be a little bit more positive than this going into this game. And in fact, if anything, I was surprised given the Alabama folks that I was around at not the acceptance, but almost the anticipation of, this might not go our way. It was borne out in the attendance in Mercedes-Benz Stadium alone. That was not 60-40 Georgia.
Oh, not at all.
Maybe 70-30, 80-20.
Yeah.
Like, where are the Alabama fans? And, boy, the ones that showed up, did they get the show that they were wanting? And a lot of the Georgia fans, albeit more optimistic than usual, there's always going to be this tempered expectation because of 41 years of scarring and wandering through the desert.
Alabama 102nd in sacks allowed, almost 3 per game. Georgia 0 sacks in that SEC championship game. How different do you think it is this time around?
I don't know, because part of that's a function of, Georgia didn't get to Bryce Young as much as they have others, and credit the offensive front for Alabama. And I said this after the game. I've not seen a turnaround that extensive maybe ever, because you consider what happened versus Auburn and how poor of an offensive performance that was, and from a protection standpoint. And there have been other pretty poor performances. You think back to the LSU game, A&M. They all stand out where you're going, these were not strong performances. Not only did that offensive front perform well individually, but the protection plan in general I thought was outstanding. And what Doug Marrone and Bill O'Brien were able to do in a week's worth of time to counter the way Georgia had throughout the season pressured and continued to do so in the SEC championship game, or at least attempt to, it was special. I mean, it was a remarkable turnaround. And that, they still got there, and they couldn't get them on the ground. I mean, you think about the near, 40-yard completion coming off their own 10-yard line to Mechie on the 3rd or 4th possession of the game, and Bryce Young gets absolutely destroyed. He stood in there and threw a beautiful pass on to Mechie out of the slot to get out of the shadows of their own goalpost. I think they started that drive with a holding penalty. They're backing up, and that led to the second touchdown of the game for Alabama. And you're thinking, there was a number of occasions. He had a completion to Jaleel Billingsley one time in the first half where you're going, he's dead to right. He's going down, and he just flips it forward. I think it was like a 19-yard completion. And you're sitting there going, that's just special. That's a Heisman-type performance. I think Georgia can get there. I think they got there less frequently, but they could probably amplify that by changing how they try to get home. But it doesn't matter if you don't get the guy to the ground. that was a big part of the game. They couldn't get Bryce Young on the ground.
Isn't that a different level of quarterback in your mind? Like, I was just watching on one of our TVs here, Aaron Rodgers, how good he is throwing off platform. He's on the run. He's not in his pocket. And not only is he staying up and avoiding sacks, but he's so accurate throwing the football off platform. And Bryce seems to have a lot of that qualities. Isn't that there's great quarterbacks, and then there's a different level for people who can throw off platforms. That seems to be Bryce's biggest strength to me, his ability to be accurate on the run. How do you look at Bryce?
Yeah, I see that. But I will say this, and I'm not meaning to dismiss that element of it because it's definitely there. But to me, his awareness, his field awareness, it's like watching a point guard. You know, when you think about the times, and it happened in the Georgia game, in that SEC championship game, where he'll just be scrambling around and he'll flip the ball out. He'll turn the play into an option-type play, or that completion to Billingsley, for example, where he can extend plays and he scrambles to throw, but he can absolutely run and pick up yards as he did the last time that Alabama faced Georgia. But to me, it's his ability to see the field, and that's after things have broken down. And there's no doubt that his pre-snap and even immediate post-snap reads are excellent. But even the way he's able to improvise and not panic, and it's not like these guys are just uncovering downfield in a typical scramble drill fashion. You know, he's got this kind of Brett Favre-type element to him where as he's improvising, as good as he is in the pocket and in system, he's as good if things break down. And that can be lethal. And that's the reason why you have to find a way to not only get to him, but get him on the ground before he can make a play like that. And teams have been able to do that. Georgia didn't the last time, and you saw the outcome.
Matt Stinchcomb, SEC Network and ESPN with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. You can follow him on Twitter at MStinch79, at MStinch79. I wonder what is going through the mind of Dan Lanning, knowing this is the last go-around with these guys you've coached this long, knowing what's on the other side of this game. You know, we've seen it. You know, we saw Kirby Smart do this, Matt, when he was leaving to come to Georgia. We saw him do it. And it just seems like it's such a tough spot for these guys.
It would have to be, right? Although I will say that I do think that in both instances, they were able to have a singular purpose. And it's got all kinds of reasons. And I think they're both selfless type guys. But let's say that they were just a bunch of cold-blooded jerks and they only cared about themselves. You know, the best thing that Dan Lanning can do is be a part of a championship-winning team before he takes on his first head coaching job. Same was true for Kirby Smart and any other coach, for that matter, worth their salt. They're not sitting there going, yeah, I'm going to build my staff and mail it in a championship setting. That doesn't happen very often. We've seen it. Alabama's seen it up close, as a matter of fact, and the coach wasn't even afforded the opportunity to coach the game. But to me, I think Dan Lanning is probably as dialed in as he's ever been. I do think that what happened in Mercedes-Benz Stadium is a motivator, especially for a unit that underperformed. I think no one would argue otherwise. Far and away their worst performance of the season, and this is your last go-around. And what's kind of interesting, guys, and I'm sure we'll hammer this all off season, I can't think of a time where a coach would have coached at a championship contending team and then play that same team the first game of the next season as the head coach of the opponent, which is kind of a unique scenario. Georgia will open with Oregon, and Dan Lanning will have that jump from contending for a national title to now facing that same team. It's something of interest. It's a talking point, but I don't think that it influences his preparation at all. More than anything, I think a bigger impact will be the fact that he'll be facing an offense that at the very least can threaten you with the run because of the way Alabama performed versus Cincinnati, and specifically the way Brian Robinson looked carrying the football.
If Georgia is to win this rematch Monday night, who is the X-factor guy for you that's got to show up?
I don't think I think that's the biggest difference between these two teams is that if you look at Alabama, they have singular talents that are better than just about anybody Georgia has. You've got Will Anderson. He's the best edge player in the game. You've got Evan Neal. He's probably the best line of scrimmage player in the game. You've got Bryce Young. He's the best quarterback on the field, maybe the best offensive player in the game. Jamison Williams. the best and most explosive offensive player on the field. For Georgia, that hasn't been the case all season long. It's been more of they've got multiple contributors. They can't afford to have just one guy have an outlier game. And so I don't know that it boils down to that. And with the emergence of Brian Robinson, I think that actually changes things, especially defensively for Georgia, where it's not like a secondary game like you ran into last time, which, of course, as they're apt to say, the best coverage is a good pass rush. There's no doubt. So I don't know that there's one guy. Georgia doesn't have that Will Anderson type guy. They had another kid named Anderson. He ain't playing in this game. So because of that, I don't know that there's an X factor on their side when it comes to a personnel standpoint. There's not a running back. If anything, you think about guys like a Brock Bowers and the type of game that he had. A guy like a James Cook. What role can George Pickens play? I don't think he gets a ton of targets, but he's obviously a good downfield threat without being the fastest guy on the field. All of them are going to have to find a way to contribute, because I don't know that they have that singular talent where if they play their best game, kind of like what Bryce Young did in the conference championship game, that they're at a position where it's a difference in the outcome.
And this is a serious question now, so I'm not trying to be funny or ask just a quirky deal, but from Dahlonega to St. Simon, bigger celebration, Braves winning the World Series this year or Georgia wins Monday night? Which resonates the most? I guess I would accept a tie as the correct answer too, but do you think it could be Georgia?
I think it's absolutely Georgia. The Braves won it and were proximate a bunch of other times and should have gotten more than our one World Series, there's no doubt. 25 years is a long time, but it isn't 41. There's no question that it would be a Georgia national championship.
Why did you Dahlonega is just an interesting starting point.
Well,
we go further up, but I get it.
Okay.
Well, Dahlonega is as far north I can name in Georgia. Yeah, I mean, that's my Georgia map. I know what I learned on the radio from Larry Munson.
You learned it because it was the Dahlonega mine train at Six Flags. That's why.
Well, no,
you go too far north and you start getting into Tennessee country, guys.
That's right.
There's some leaching at the borders here in this state.
Yeah. And if you go to a certain place, it becomes Clemson territory, right?
That's true. Okay.
No doubt. West part of Georgia, there's a whole lot of there's a lot of Bama folks, a lot of Auburn folks. There's a lot of folks that live in this little state over here.
He is Matt Stinchcomb. At mstinch79 is where you follow him on Twitter. See him on ESPN and the SEC Network. Matt, we greatly appreciate the time.
All right, guys. Y'all have fun. This should be a good one on Monday.
Cannot wait. Thank you. Take care. Matt with us, like all of our guests, on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.